Good morning, conference. Good morning. I know it's very early in the morning, but I'm going to start with a little mini pub quiz. Who said when you are tired of London, you're tired of life? No? John? Exactly, no, it wasn't. It was, of course, Dr. Johnson, Samuel Johnson. And, of course, it's one of those very well-known quotes. But, you know, over the past decade, something like 600,000 Londoners have left our capital city. But they're not doing it because they're tired of life or indeed tired of London. They're leaving because it has simply become impossible for them to live there. There is a chronic housing shortage. The costs of buying has meant that ownership is now inconceivable in London for thousands of young people. There are serious strains on London's schools, its hospitals, and of course its social services. Now, there is no question that this has been driven by uncontrolled immigration. But I can tell you, as I'm sure you know already, that London politicians simply refuse to discuss this. In the last few weeks, I've been doing these hustings with the other mayoral candidates, and sometimes it feels like you're living in a kind of alternate universe. They come up with these figures. They say, we're going to build 40,000 houses, or we're going to build 60,000 houses, take your pick. You know, they just bring them out of thin air. But not one of them talks about the chief reason why we have such a problem in London in the first place. And as the candidate in London, I've been the only one to state what everybody with any common sense knows, that this is simply a matter of supply and demand. London's population is growing at an unprecedented rate in modern history of roughly 1 million people a decade. Now, these increases are down, indeed, to international migration. It is estimated that by the year 2050, London's population might be 13.5 million. And that is probably a conservative estimate. Now, only we in UKIP say what everyone knows to be true, and we must keep saying it. Such figures are simply unsustainable. We need a proper, fair, and controlled migration system, and only then can we plan properly for the future. And to do that, we must leave the EU. Now, in London, it's crucial that we put Londoners first. So priority in social housing, which makes up about a quarter of the housing stock in London, must be given to local people. This is simply a matter of being fair. I don't want Londoners to leave London. I also believe that we shouldn't look at London purely as an economic marketplace. You know, Boris Johnson boasted that London has something like 80 billionaires, and Sadiq Khan, the Labour candidate now, loves the fact that the capital is home to something like 400,000 millionaires. In other words, they're carrying on the Peter Mandelson tradition, you know, of being intensely relaxed about people making a lot of money. Now, I am sure that is all very nice, but these sorts of figures should not be the benchmark from which to judge the success of a city or indeed a country. London's relentless strive for superiority on the economic front has been allowed to overshadow everything else. More and more of its spaces are becoming monetized. So, for example, around about 3,000 pubs have closed in recent years, and many of them converted into that new phenomenon, luxury flats, which, of course, nobody in the vicinity can afford. So what it means is that long-standing hubs of the community are replaced by flats, which basically often are marketed overseas to people who haven't even seen them. Similarly in London, we would get rid of such vanity projects which, you know, the cosy elites become very, very fond of. One such in London is something called the Garden Bridge. I don't know if you've heard anything about this, but this would be a bridge, you know, which has been championed by Joanna Lumley, which would be one that you couldn't cycle across. You'd have to get off your bike and, you know, walk across it. You would have to give notice if there are more than 8 people going to go across the bridge in a group. And it will also be closed quite regularly for corporate functions. Now, You know, when about 5 museums are closing in places like Lancashire through lack of funds, the last thing London needs, I think, is yet another vanity bridge. It would be a bad use of at least £60 million worth of public money, and we would scrap it. One of the most important things that I think Nigel's ever said, and I think it was an off-the-cuff remark, was that society is not just all about money. And just like a country, a city has a soul too, and it's made up not just of the present, but of the past, and also, of course, what is yet to come. And I fear that London has become more segregated and atomized in recent years. But, you know, I want us to come together again in London. The diverse peoples of London must be united under one flag and under one law. But I also want all Londoners to know about the city that they're joining, its extraordinary history, its customs, and its character. Now, there's one Labour mayor, Sir Robin Wales, who set about uniting the very diverse people of his borough by putting an emphasis on shared language and indeed about a knowledge of the city. I admire this initiative, you know, but I would like it for the whole of London. My family were Londoners going back generations, and I've lived and worked in London all my life, and I can't really imagine being anywhere else. The fact that they were Londoners formed part of my parents' character in a way, and I think it really does mine too. I've stood as a UKIP candidate in 3 elections now and have campaigned and spoken all over London, and I've been the party's culture spokesman now for the past 2 years. And when I stood in the parliamentary election in Eltham, which is close to where I lived, it became clear to me that so many of the people who were coming over to us for the first time were indeed traditional Labour voters. Now, this is a huge opportunity for us everywhere in the UK and particularly in London. These voters need a voice. At the election in May, something like 300,000 Londoners voted for UKIP. That's about 9%. That's so much now for a city that apparently is not UKIP and UKIP is not it. We're doing amazingly well. We are now the 3rd party in London in terms of votes. We have a superb campaign team in London, and the coverage we're receiving is the best we've ever had there. And we are now being recognised by the media, which of course is all based in London, as one of the main parties for the forthcoming campaigns. So in London, we are now poised to make a real breakthrough. We will emerge in May with members on the London Assembly, and why this is so crucial, and it cannot be emphasised enough, is that when you have your voices in situ in the London Assembly or the other assemblies around the country, this will give us the most enormous boost and the most wonderful focus for the forthcoming campaign to get out of the EU. But I will never forget as well, even though I'm being very London-centric this morning, and I'm very sorry about that, I'll never forget that London is Britain's capital. Now, I'm proud to be British, and I'm very proud to be a Londoner. And I will be privileged to speak for UKIP and getting out of the EU in London. Thank you very much.